Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Or if you're here for the first time, welcome to the channel and subscribe. We are once again going to work on my 1968 Chevelle. Right now we are working out a transmission issue where we are getting some sort of water or antifreeze contamination into the transmission. And it's making our transmission fluid look a lot like, I don't know, some sort of strawberry syrup, strawberry daiquiri, strawberry milkshake, Pepto-Bismol, whatever you want to call it. It shouldn't look like that. This should be dark red or reddish brown and pretty clear. MRE spoons. Good for a lot of stuff. Now, through a process of trial and error, mostly error, I have narrowed it down to the internal cooler here in the radiator is where that exchange is happening, mainly because this is the only place where water or coolant can get to the transmission through these cooler lines. So what we're going to do today is, well, one, we're going to change the filter out because I'm sure it's loaded with coolant and water, and two, we are going to put in an external transmission cooler, which is going to mount somewhere down here on the front side of this radiator, hopefully. Everybody got that? Okay, let's get started. First order of business here is we need to drop this transmission pan. Luckily, this being a Powerglide, this has a drain bolt on it. I have already drained most of the fluid out. It's been sitting overnight, so I'm sure there's more that's accumulated in the pan, but yeah, we're going to find out, I guess. Okay, now that we've got that pried loose, we can start to drop it down just a little bit at a time. There's one bolt, only one left. And good thing is there's not too much fluid left in this pan. There we go. Nailed it. Two things. First, here is the filter. And second, it looks absolutely disgusting and contaminated. Let's check the pan out. Hey, look, dipstick. And here's everything that's in our transmission pan. And what is not a good sign is this. All this gray, that's lots of clutch material. Yeah, that's not great. That's what fluid contamination does. Now, I can't say that this is all from fluid contamination, as this is a 1968 vehicle. There's probably quite a bit of this is just from, 60 years-ish, 50-something years of use. But that's not great. But this is already in the pan, and it was shifting fine. So it didn't need this. See if we can do this without making a mess. Ordinarily, to clean up the rest of this pan, I would probably use something just like some brake parts cleaner, carb cleaner, something simple. But this is pretty thick, and I want to make sure I get all of it out of here. So we are going to use Super Clean. And this is definitely going to get any residue out of this pan. You don't have to use the aerosol version. I just happen to have it. By the way, it works very well, but do use in a well-ventilated area, such as an open garage. The bubbling means it's working. Yes, clean, my friend. Clean. Oh yeah, that makes it really easy to just wipe this out. Now, was it going to be super hard to scrape this and wipe this out? No, I mean, ATF is a detergent. It wouldn't have been too bad, but as much clutch material was in there and as much contamination from coolant or water was in there, I just felt that Super Clean was probably the better choice over just a basic brake clean. It's a lot more substantial cleaner. And just like that, we've got a brand new transmission pan. Look, you can actually see where the filter was. Weird. Now it's time to peel this gasket off. And earlier, when I had it on the car, I was complaining that somebody had siliconed this. They hadn't. What happened is I had forgotten to remove two bolts on one side, so I was trying to peel it down. Two bolts were preventing me from doing that. So I guess make sure you remove all the bolts before you remove the pan. It comes off much easier. And this gasket might not be siliconed at all. Oh, this would be the best. Rarely do you get these off in one piece. I would really like that to happen and make my day a lot easier. Come on. Oh, perfect. We have a winner. I don't even think that I need to scrape or buff this. That's perfectly clean. We can just put that right back on. Now for the new gasket, I am going to put a couple dabs of silicone on here just to hold it in place while we're trying to put it back up onto the transmission. I don't need to seal it. I just want it to stay where it's supposed to stay. You don't need a whole lot to do that. Just sort of make it tacky in a couple spots so it doesn't slide around. That'll be more than enough to frustrate you next time when you take it off. Just like that. Hopefully this is the right gasket. It sure looked like it on the website. I'm pretty sure I got this from AutoZone, although I can't remember the part number. So I'm not going to put it in any links. Sorry. Alright, that can set up while we change the filter. Right here is our filter, and since this is the 1960s, they didn't use bolts. Of course they used a slotted screwdriver. Fantastic. Let's hope those break free. It's not like they're going to be corroded. They've been sitting in fluid for 50 years. These should not be too tight. They are not. That is good news. Not too bad. Oh, yeah, no. Pretty bad. Good thing I did that. Ugh. There's even more material up in this filter. That's not great. And before we put this back on, let's do ourselves a favor and wipe all the contaminated fluid off of everything we can see. It's just going to aid in us flushing it later. There's not going to be a whole lot left anyways. Pretty much what's left is going to be in the cooler lines, and the torque converter. I mean, a little bit in the valve body, but not a whole lot. You know, if you looked in a book, there's probably some obscure slotted screwdriver torque spec for this, but we're going to go with about as tight as they were before, and that should be good. So I'm going to go snug and then snug and then and there we go. Fresh filter. The way this gasket is formed, these bolt holes are slightly smaller than the actual bolts, so I think we should shove them through and they'll actually stay in place. Something like that. This could be my greatest idea of the day, and it might also be my worst. Stay tuned. And then you're going to go ahead and start some of these bolts with your fingers, because you never want to just start bolts with air tools or power tools, because that's a good chance of cross-threading them. And this being aluminum, I don't want to do that. Once I get a couple started and this pan's in place, we'll be all right. Also, if you have a drain plug, make sure you snug that up before you go throwing fluid back in it. It has been a while, but I'm pretty sure that that's snug. It should be all of them. Go ahead and make sure. Yes, it is, and they are all torqued to spec, as you just saw. Well, I guess the next thing we're going to do is mount our cooler. This is a torque flow transmission cooler, part number 911403. 911 is accurate. This is a transmission emergency. Comes with a transmission hose, clamps, little mounting things to go through the radiator, and, of course, the cooler. Our transmission cooler lines are over here, so we're going to stick with this going on this side. And luckily, there is room right here between the radiator and the radiator support, radiator, whatever you want to call it, front hoochie jabby thingy. Yeah, there. That's where the hose is going to go through. I know what this is called. It escapes me right now. It doesn't matter either. But before we do that, what we want to do is we want to flush the lines, and we want to flush the torque converter if we can. So we're going to add fluid back in, and then we are going to do a DIY flush job on the transmission. And we're not going to be using any expensive transmission fluid on this job because you saw the klutz material. This transmission could be on its way out, so I'm not going to waste a whole bunch of money. So we've got just some basic Fram ATF. It says it's for Dexron 3. I'm not even sure this transmission was made when there was Dexron 3. It was probably Dexron 1. But I put 3 quarts into this gallon jug so we know how much we're putting in right now. Then we'll hook up our DIY flush kit, which sounds cooler than it is. All right, it's close enough. Here is our DIY flush kit. Hopefully this works. I made an IV bottle out of an old washer fluid bottle and some Harbor Freight tubing. That is going to the top line to the transmission cooler, which should be the line back to the transmission after the fluid has been cooled. The bottom line is draining out right here into this pan so we can see what the fluid looks like, and we can stop flushing once it's pretty normalish. Now what we have to do is we have to start the car and let the transmission pump move all the fluid in through the cooler, or through what it thinks is the cooler, really an IV bag and a drain, and we should hopefully drain that while filling that. Also, I put exactly 2 quarts in there, so at least we know how much we've gone through. What's really going to speed up this process is if I actually hook the battery up. It has a dead drain I haven't dealt with yet, so I have to unhook it, and obviously I didn't because I was charging the battery and killed it. We're hooked up now. Oh, it's working. That's working really well. I can't tell how much is draining out of there, but it does seem to be going down, so that's good. I don't want to run the pump dry, so we're going to have to keep an eye on everything. And we may actually have to shut it off as well, because it looks like we could definitely overfill this. Yeah. That's not really going down. Well, the bottom part of this plan is working extremely well. The top part, not so much. So I think what we're going to do is disconnect this and just go ahead and fill the transmission back up through the dipstick tube and see what kind of fluid we get out of there then. I also need to empty this before it overflows. Luckily, my DIY drain pan has a built-in drain itself. Yes. You know what it is. It's an antifreeze jug. Science. Water goes from the highest point to the lowest, even if it's pink. That's better. We are now transfusing transmission fluid via the dipstick tube. And after a few minutes here, that's what transmission fluid is supposed to look like. Red and clear. There we go. Something like that ought to do. Let's fire this thing up and look for leaks. There's sure to be some. Alright, I don't see any active leaks right now from upper, lower, cooler, anything like that. Let's check the pan. Pan looks nice and dry. That is from where I spilled while refilling. That's right above the dipstick tube. And speaking of dipstick tubes, let's go ahead and check our fluid color and our fluid level. Color is nice and clear like it's supposed to be, and we are a little above the full mark, but we haven't run it through the gears yet, so that is looking good like it's supposed to. Last thing we want to do, since there was so much clutch fluid in that pan, and I know it was already there and the transmission did work, we're going to make sure that after flushing, this still goes in reverse and drive and turns the wheels. Probably be a good thing. Reverse works just fine. How about drive? And brakes. And the last thing we had to do here is we blocked off the old cooler, because if there is a crack that was letting coolant come into the cooler with the lines off, it's just going to be leaking radiator fluid, coolant, antifreeze, whatever you want to call it. So these are 5/16 inverted flares, so it's going to seal just fine. It's not regular pipe plugs. If you use regular pipe plugs, there's a chance you'll have a leak. So get the inverted flares like you're supposed to, so it thinks that there's still a line attached. All right, well, I hope that's fixed. But the only real way to know if it's fixed is to drive it and keep checking fluid levels and the color of the fluid to make sure we're not still getting intrusion of water or coolant somewhere. So this should take care of it. Hopefully, if you've got a transmission that has a similar issue, this helped you out a lot. Hopefully this helps me out a lot too. I really hope we solved the problem, but there you go. 1968 Powerglide filter and gasket and external transmission cooler. We'll see you next time.